Hello, welcome to the Gay Cruise and Travel Podcast with me, just Joey T. All right, a slightly special edition of the podcast today after the emergency episode that I posted 2 or 3 days ago. Today, we're going to talk about the good and bad room locations, cabin locations on board the Symphony of the Seas, specifically for the Atlantis sailing on the ship coming up next February in 2026. One of the questions I sometimes get asked is, hey Joey, we're gonna book this cruise. What are some good places on the ship to book a room? Like which part of the ship would be a good place for a room to be located in? And conversely, what are some not so good or horrible places on the ship that you want to stay away from, where you don't want your room to be in that part of the ship? So this is also very Atlantis. Some of these are very Atlantis specific reasons as well, because Atlantis, they throw a lot of parties and have different events and activities at lots of different venues throughout the ship. Venues that usually wouldn't host a party on a regular sailing. So today, that's what we're going to dig into. So obviously this is going to be most applicable to the folks who are looking to book a room on the Symphony of the Seas with Atlantis on that sailing next February coming up. I also did another episode, that emergency episode I was talking about, that came out May the 2nd, and that talks about some of the basic information on this particular Atlantis cruise, but it's also got some of the pre-sale info for that particular cruise. The pre-sale for this sailing was launched April 30th, first for the people who were on the Allure cruise this past February in 2025. Then it's going to go into an alumni pre-sale. Then it's going to go into the public sale. So if you're interested in that, go check out. That was episode 23 of this podcast, released on May 2nd. But without further ado, actually, with one more ado, am I using that properly? With one more thing I want to talk about before we get right into it. If you enjoy my YouTube videos on my YouTube channel, Just Joey T, if you enjoyed any episodes of this podcast, if you have found any of my content helpful or entertaining in some way, I would super appreciate it if you can find in your hearts to support me a little bit by leaving a tip in YouTube. You can use the thanks button under any of my YouTube videos, and that will allow you to leave me a tip within YouTube, or I have a Buy My Coffee, and everything is linked down in the description below. Thank you for your support. All right, let's get to it. We're gonna go by deck, starting from the lowest to the highest, okay? Primarily, I'm gonna highlight the areas you probably wanna stay away from, because honestly, there are more good locations than bad locations on most of the decks. There are really only 2 or 3 areas of the ship where you really ought to stay away from them. And even some of the other areas that are like kind of sort of iffy, you're probably going to be okay. But then definitely there are some parts of the ship that I think this is like a really good part of the ship to stay in for many reasons. We're going to start with Deck 3. Now, Deck 3 is also home to Studio B. Okay, it's actually Decks 3 and 4. The Studio B is not just like standard ceiling height. It's like it kind of sort of takes up multiple decks in the middle of the ship. But Deck 3, that's like the main thing you're going to need to be aware of. They're also on the deck above a couple of like minor / backup venues that Atlantis might use for some certain activities or events, but they're not going to be like big parties that are going to go till like 3 or 4 a.m. mainly. Looking at the map for Deck 3, you're going to want to stay away from the rooms that are kind of in the middle of the ship, because they're going to be right beside Studio B. And Studio B, there's not going to be a party there every single night, but they're going to have, at the minimum, one party. They usually have the Neon Playground party there in the middle of the sailing. That is almost guaranteed to happen in Studio B. They also have just regular shows in Studio B, not like late into the night, but just in like the regular evening kind of dinner hours where shows would kind of usually happen, you know, somewhere between like 7 to 10 p.m., for example. However, Studio B is also the backup indoor venue. If for whatever reason there's some weather outside, they will sometimes bring the party from the outdoor venue, which should be the solarium. We'll get to that when we get to the upper decks later in the episode. They have the option, if they choose to do so, to bring the party indoors. And the only venue they can really bring it into is Studio B. It's the only indoor venue large enough to really hold one of the main nighttime parties. So, okay, some of the rooms you don't want to be near. I've got some of these room numbers that are kind of like rough estimates of like the block of rooms you don't want to be near. So room numbers are start from 319 to 322 on the port side, 359 to 362 on the starboard or the right side. That's right beside Studio B. And if you, I would just avoid that. Some of you might be thinking, well, I'm going to be at the party anyways, so it won't matter to me. That could very well be true. And that's something you could keep in mind when I talk about why I think some of these rooms are less desirable. Here's the thing. Me and my roommate, we were on the Allure cruise this year, okay? And on one of the nights, my roommate felt sick. Like he just needed rest. This was like midnight, 1 a.m. when the party was going. I went to the party and he just needed rest. He just had to like sleep it off. And I've been on other cruises before where it's not like me or my roommate or my friend, they were sick. It's just like they were just unexpectedly very tired. Maybe they just like, was going partying a little bit too much like the first X number of days or whatever. And by the middle of the cruise, they just needed to set it out that one party or that one night or whatever. So that's kind of the problem with having that mindset of like, oh, it's okay if they have one party, one of the nights in Studio B. I'm going to be at that party anyways. I'll be partying all night. You just might not know 100% for sure if you might just feel a little tired or like possibly might even be feeling a little ill that particular night. So there are much better locations to stay than right beside Studio B anyways. So like, why book somewhere where it could be noisy and it could be disruptive to you when like there's like a million more other rooms that don't have this problem anyways, and you don't have to worry about it. So there you go. So from room number starting from 319 to 322 on the port side, 359 to 362 on the starboard or the right side, that's like right beside Studio B. You might get some of like the boom, 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 the bass emanate back into your room. There's some other rooms that kind of are near-ish to Studio B, where it's kind of sort of like maybe yes, maybe no. You may or may not hear the noise from it. So on the port side, that's the 323 rooms. On the starboard side, the 363 rooms. That's kind of sort of like you may or may not be close enough to hear it. You're probably going to be okay, but if you have a choice, I would just be a little further away from that. Some special mentions aside from Studio B. So rooms 3178 to the 318. There's a little venue called The Attic that's right above. I don't expect there to be any late night, early morning noise, but sometimes they might have like possibly a singer, a pianist or something like that, or like a tiny little act above in like the regular nighttime hours. I mean, it's probably nothing. Similarly, on the starboard side, 3578 to the 358, a small block of rooms. Casino Royale is upstairs. That's not the casino. That's actually a tiny little small venue. It's not the end of the world. If you're there, you're fine. But if you might be just very sensitive to noise kind of sort of in like the regular nighttime hours, you might consider going somewhere else. Now, I do have some good news for Deck 3. There are some rooms at the back, especially if you're looking for like the ocean view rooms. So the rooms that are towards the very back, near the backside of elevators, those are actually kind of sort of a hidden gem a little bit because people automatically expect, oh, Deck 3, Studio B, all of them are bad. That's actually not true. I've stayed at one of the rooms in the very back of Deck 3 on one of the previous years of this cruise, and it was very quiet. It's very quiet because not a lot of people go to Deck 3. It's not a very popular deck. There's not like a lot of rooms on Deck 3. So it was actually one of the quietest rooms I've ever had, partially because I didn't have a balcony and you don't get like sometimes the noise leaking in through like the balcony door. But I was at like the very, very back. I was super close to the elevator. So it's like a very short walk to get to the elevators. And there was never that much traffic. Like there was never that many people walking up and down the corridors on Deck 3. So this would be any of the rooms that are like starting with 325, the balcony rooms on the port side, or 365 on the starboard on the right side. You're also very close to main dining. Main dining is levels 3, 4, 5. decks 3, 4, 5. And you should do deck 3 first. If deck 3 fills up, then they might redirect people to go to deck 4. But it always starts on deck 3. And yeah, so that is kind of sort of like a hidden gem. It's like super close to the elevators. You're not getting any noise from Studio B when you're there. And you're very close to main dining if that is a perk. And you obviously being close to elevators anywhere in the ship is always nice. So those are the ocean view rooms. There's a bunch of interior rooms at the back of deck 3 as well. There are some rooms that are right behind Studio B that you probably don't want to be at, 3800 to 3820. That is like right behind Studio B. So I marked that red. The even numbers, stay away from those. Just back from that, you're probably okay from about 3801 to 3842. Even further back, you shouldn't get any of the noise from Studio B. It should be pretty quiet right around there, and you are very close to that set of elevators. So that's 38, 44, and higher. That's like a really nice area to be. So that is deck 3. I know on the Atlantis website, they've got warnings now for deck 3 and also deck 14, which we'll talk about before. Deck 3, the warning is, oh, Studio B's here. Deck 14 is right under the pool deck. So deck 3, yeah, a lot of the rooms are a little dicey, but there is like towards the very back, those rooms are actually, don't be scared of those. Those are actually completely fine. Hey, when was the last time you really took care of your skin? The skin is the largest organ in the whole human body and is doing so much for you. It protects you from germs and cooties. It keeps you warm when you're cold. It keeps you cool when you're hot. It's making vitamin D. It gives you the gift of touch and sensation. And that's just scratching the surface, so you better take care of it. I started my own skincare company, Serve Labs, to serve fun and functional skincare for everyone, so that you can serve fun while serving face. Go to servelabs.co, servelabs.co, or follow us at Serve Labs on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, and discover how easy and fun it is to treat your skin right with Serve Labs. All right, there are no staterooms on decks 4 and 5. 4 is the casino and also Studio B. Deck 5 is the Royal Promenade, which leads us to deck 6 is the next deck that has staterooms in it. So some of the issues with deck 6, which are not major issues, they're minor things. The first of all is the Promenade, which has a little bit of noise sometimes. And the Promenade also has some little venues and bars and cafes and like the pizza places on the Promenade on deck 5, for example. And then you're going to have some of the cabins on deck 6 right above some of these things. So sometimes that's an issue. The main theater is going to be right below the very front of deck 6. So obviously the theater can get noisy. They don't do any parties at the theater though. It's just shows. And then towards the very back, you're going to get the Aqua Theater because the Aqua Theater is on the boardwalk, which starts on deck 6 and goes up from there. Let's start from the very front of the ship. Some of the interior rooms at the front is going to be right above the main theater, which is probably not a good thing. So these are 6135 to 6553. So again, they don't do any parties there. But if you're the type to kind of sort of hang out in your room, maybe during like the dinner, early mid-evening time, and the theater also gets used kind of during the daytime, not for shows, but they practice and do rehearsals, and they'll play music for that. So if you're at all the type to kind of sort of hang out in your room and want that peace of quiet, kind of during the regular daytime into like dinner time, I would kind of pick a different room. Again, it's not going to be hugely noisy, but the thing is, again, there are a lot of other rooms that are like nowhere near the theater and nowhere near any other place that might have loud music. So like, why not pick another part of the ship if you have that option? So that's interior rooms 6135 to 6553. The odd number is near the front. It's right above the theater. Maybe you don't want to be there. All right. There are some Prominent View interior rooms. So it's an interior room, but it's got like a window out to the promenade. If you are signing for that room, it's like, okay, you know it's going to look out to the promenade. So any promenade noise is going to filter out through that window a little bit. They only do one party at the promenade, and it would be the welcome party on the very first night. Once in a while, they might do the welcome party at Studio B instead. But most years, they have the welcome party the first night on the promenade itself. And if you, for whatever reason, don't want to party that first night, then those rooms are going to be noisy. So that's just something to keep in mind. The Promenade is not usually a very loud place. They do play like a little bit of music throughout the Promenade. You do have people hang out there. People will go to the pizza place or the Cafe Promenade at like the early morning hours, even after parties ended. Because like the Cafe Promenade is 24 hours and the pizza place is not 24 hours, but like they have extended hours. So if you're very, very sensitive to noise, maybe don't pick the Promenade View rooms. Going towards the back of the ship, for some of the ocean balconies back there, and this is going to be a recurring theme, not just for this deck, deck 6, but also for like the next several decks up. The Aqua Theater is at the very back of the ship, and it's kind of has an effect on like the multiple decks from deck 6 on above. When you're at the very back, you might get some noise from whatever's going on at the Aqua Theater. During the daytime, they'll do tea dances. So there's probably like going to be 3 tea dances during the afternoon from like 3 or 4 p.m. until like 6 or 7 p.m. And then in the early to mid-evening, kind of around dinner time, they do have some shows put on by Royal Caribbean. Not every single night, but like a good number of the nights back there. And it's also got music as well. They will very likely do 2 nighttime parties at the Aqua Theater. They usually do the EDM concert festival back there as well. And then they sometimes might also do the Atlantis Classics party, which is music from the 80s, 90s into the 2000s. So if you have a room, an ocean view room that is near the very back, so something from like 6310 to 6328 on the port side, the even numbers, 6710 to 6728, even numbers on the starboard or right side. You know, the closer you get to the Aqua Theater, the more you're gonna get the noise from the Aqua Theater, especially any loud music that they play. So again, not the end of the world, but if you know that you might be a little more sensitive to noises from any parties, just pick an ocean balcony that's further up the ship and not at the very, very back. All right. Deck 7, move it right along. Again, you also have some Promenade View rooms on Deck 7. So the same issue I described before. 7185 up to 7205 for the odd numbers. 7585 to 7605, starboard side. Same Promenade issue I talked about before. Not the end of the world, not super noisy. The other thing with Deck 7 is you're going to have some of the specialty premium restaurants right above you. The restaurants are not super, super noisy places, and restaurants are only open from like during dinner time anyways, probably from like 6 to 9 or 10. And that's probably a time where you are not super likely to be in your room anyways. But just in case, 7585 to 7605, for example, just Jamie's Italian right above you. Then moving towards the back of Deck 7, again, we have the ocean balcony rooms that are very close to the very back. And you're going to be very close to the Aqua Theater. 7320 on back on the port side and 7720 on back on the starboard side. Same notes. I was looking at the map for Deck 7 near the back, and there looks like there are some maybe boardwalk view rooms. Basically, there's like these 8 rooms. It's not like labeled on the legend, but they look to be interior window rooms that might look out into the boardwalk. So it's 7319 to 7325 on the port side, 7719 to 7725 on the starboard side. These are all odd number rooms. If there are windows in these rooms, these are gonna look right out into the boardwalk, kind of close to the Aqua Theater. So again, it's not gonna be the quietest place on Deck 7. All right, Deck 8. So Deck 8 is the same deck where Central Park is. So the middle of Deck 8 is Central Park. It's actually, it's a park. It's actually really nice. It's a really nice place to actually walk through. It's actually a really unique, cool feature of these Oasis class ships from Royal Caribbean. So again, near the back of Deck 8, if you are in an ocean balcony room, at the very back, that's very close to the Aqua Theater, from like 8320 on back on the port side, 8720 on back on the starboard side. Just know that if there's a lot of loud music going on in the Aqua Theater, you will probably hear a little bit of it from your ocean balcony room. The other note I have is some of the rooms are right across the corridor or the hallway from one of the premium restaurants that are in Central Park. So every restaurant has like the front entrance where like, that's how you go to the restaurant as a guest. But the back of each restaurant, they also have like a back door, clearly, for like the staff and stuff to like access and use or whatever. So there's not like a separate corridor just for the restaurants. The back of each of the restaurants is just like the same hallway and corridor that the staterooms are in. I don't think it's going to be too much of like a noise issue, but I point that out because it's also like the back access for some of these restaurants. So if you're kind of in the middle of the ship on deck 8, this is mostly for like the ocean balcony rooms that are like between the two, the front and back set of elevators. It's not like the staff are going in and out all the time, but obviously they do sometimes have to use the back access and not go through the front of the restaurant when the restaurant is open and things like that. But I think it's a pretty minor issue. So that's deck 8. All right, deck 9, same story. At the very back, you're going to be close to Aqua Theater. But deck 9, by and large, is like mostly pretty good. Decks 9, 10, and 11 are the Goldilocks. It's like the sweet spot. We're starting to get away from anything that is remotely any sort of venue or restaurant or anything like that. And it's a very central deck because there's like decks 3 and 4, you've got Studio B. Deck 5 is a promenade, and then you have 3, 4, 5. At the back is the main dining restaurant, the main dining room. And then decks like 3, 4, 5-ish at the front is the main theater, the Royal Theater, right? And then up on deck 15 is the pool deck and the solarium. Almost forgot the name. So solarium is at the very front of deck 15, and most of the nighttime parties are happening there. So by being in like one of the middle decks like 9, 10, or 11, that's like the best. That's like the sweet spot because you have at least like a couple decks between you and any potential noise. So it's really quiet. You're never more than like 3 or 4 decks from one of the big amenity decks, like deck 5 for the Royal Promenade, or like deck 15 for the pool deck, for example. So you're never like super, super far away. You're not going to be like 8 decks away from something. So decks 9, 10, 11 generally are the decks I recommend people start with, assuming one of those decks has the type of room that you want. And I mean, I think they have almost every type of room. If you're one of those people that are booking one of those super fancy suites, that's on a completely separate deck. That's like deck 17 or something. And that's in like a very secluded part of the ship that you don't have to worry about having any noise or anything. But decks 9, 10, 11 generally are very, very good. The only minor note I have for deck 9 is, again, we talked about deck 8 having some of those premium specialty restaurants off of Central Park. There are some rooms on deck 9 that are right above those restaurants. Again, I think it's going to be very, very like a minor issue, if an issue at all. But just in case you're curious where these rooms might be, so you've got starboard side 959 to the 961 rooms. Right below is Jamie's Italian. Port side 923 to 925. The room numbers to start with those, the odd numbers. That's Chops Grills right below. Starboard side 963 to 965, odd numbers. You have 150 Central Park below. So restaurants are not super, super loud. They're just doing dinner time. You're probably not in your room during dinner time anyways. But just in case you think you might be sensitive to that, there are also some other rooms and other decks that you can choose as well. So one of my earliest teenage obsessions was skincare. Instead of looking at toys in the kids section at the store, I was looking at moisturizers in the skincare section. As I grew up and navigated my sexuality, I saw that most of the beauty industry was aimed at feminine women, sometimes at masculine men, but everyone else was left out. It wasn't for someone like me. With Surf Labs, I wanted to create a fun skincare experience for everyone. I'm pretty sure your skin doesn't care how masc or femme you are or who you love, but I'm absolutely sure you need to take care of it. Check us out at surflabs.co, servelabs.co, and you can also find us on Instagram and Twitter at surflabs. 10 and 11, I always try to choose deck 10. That's kind of like my favorite deck. Also same for like deck 11. The only notes I have for anything on 10 or 11, that's when we start to get the Central Park balconies. Obviously, a balcony that looks over Central Park, and it's also open all the way up to the pool deck, you are going to get some noise on the Central Park balconies from the pool deck during the daytime. So in the morning hours, like before noontime, is some mellow music that you probably won't hear too much of in your stateroom. It's probably not loud enough to wake you up. However, from like noon-ish onwards, I know that Atlantis, they do turn up the music and they do play some livelier tunes. Morning music on the pool deck, it's more mellow, like it's still morning time. From noon onwards, especially if it's like a sea day and like people are starting to sunbathe and like have a good time on the pool deck or whatever, it will be more like it's, and they do turn it up. I do know that for a fact. Me and my roommate on the Allure cruise, we're on a Central Park balcony, and it just happened on the Allure. The seals on the patio doors were not super awesome, and we can hear all the noise from the pool deck because the seal on the patio door was just worn and it just wasn't really sealing any of the noise. So we definitely needed earplugs if we knew we were going to sleep in, which was like every single morning. So just be warned, I can't guarantee that the seals on your patio door are going to be perfect in the particular room that you're going to be in, but it just comes with the territory of one of the interior balcony rooms. I talk about the boardwalk balcony rooms. If you sign up for one of those, you are going to get the noise from whatever music, loud music or parties or whatever they're throwing at the Aqua Theater. The same similar concept for the Central Park balconies. You will hear the music from the pool deck. If you're on like deck 10, one of the lower level Central Park balconies, because you're still like a few decks away from the pool deck, it won't be as loud, but you know, there's still definitely that chance there. That's the only note I have. Decks 10 and 11 are some of my favorites. Deck 12 is a little interesting because it's still a really good deck, but there's only one deck between you and the pool deck. Now, on this particular cruise, I don't expect Atlantis are going to throw any nighttime dance parties by the pool. They've done it on one sailing before. I think, is it the 2020 or the 2022? There's only been one time I know that Atlantis on this design of ship, this class of ship, where they tried to do the nighttime parties actually by the pool instead of at the solarium at the very front of the ship on deck 15, the pool deck level. Assuming that they continue not to do nighttime parties where the actual pool is, and as far as I can tell, they hate that idea, they don't want to run it there, then it should be okay to be on deck 12 because you're not close to the nighttime parties. Again, you might get a little bit of noise from the Central Park balconies. The other note I have for deck 12 is if you're at the very front of deck 12, you're only one deck below the solarium. That's where they will probably host all the nighttime parties, most of the nighttime parties and all of them. And it could be a little bit noisy. So if you were at the very front of deck 12, so something like 12138 to 12148 even numbers, or 12538 to 12548 even numbers. Those are just some of the rooms, the ocean back rooms, the very tippy front of deck 12. There's a slight chance you might get some of the it's from the nighttime parties they host at the solarium. So if you have a choice, maybe move yourself a little bit further away. Deck 14, try not to. Deck 3 is the only other part of the ship where it's like, okay, just don't be right beside Studio B. And there's like a section of rooms highlighted where, okay, so right beside Studio B, just try to be somewhere else. There's a lot of rooms on deck 14 I would not recommend because you're right under the pool deck and you're going to hear the music, whatever it's music they play on the pool deck, especially just doing from like 12 noon-ish on until like the late afternoon. They play that music the whole time, but it's just people sunbathing, hanging out at the pool. They have music there, and they do turn it up a little bit. Depending on which part of the ship and which part of the pool deck you're right under, you're going to get footsteps, stomping, whatever, okay? If some group of gays is like jumping up and down for some stupid reason, and they happen to be right above your room, they will wake you up, okay? It's hard to say exactly which rooms are going to be the noisiest because the pool deck, they've got so many different types of pools. There's like the splash zone, they have a sports pool, they have the main pool, they have this beach pool thing. They've got a couple of hot tubs. There's going to be people walking up and down on like the side it's really hard to tell if you are under the pool deck if it's going to be quiet or not quiet. Because of that, I generally recommend people to just completely stay away from deck 14. If you don't want to have to like look up which part of deck 14 may or may not, just go to a different deck. Unless you have no other choice, just be on like deck 12 or deck 10 or deck 11 and like not have to worry about it. Because if you just have some bad luck and you happen to be like right under a part of deck 14 where like the gates are stomping up and down and you are trying to sleep in and get some beauty rest, it's like, that's going to be tough. Those ceilings are not thick. They're not designed to insulate any noise. So yeah, there's just so much of deck 14 I don't recommend you stay in. Okay, for example, any of the Central Park balconies, pretty much all the Central Park balconies on deck 14, try to move to a different deck. It's just gonna. I would just wouldn't. I've marked it as red. It's like I just wouldn't take that risk personally. And then a lot of the balcony rooms along the side of the ship, if you're at the front, that's where the solarium is. So you're gonna get the party noise at night because it's right up. The solarium's gonna be right above you. Like the main part of the solarium where the dance floor is, there are no staterooms right under it. But further back in the solarium where they have like the entrance to the solarium, you know, it's not exactly quiet there either. And there are starting to be, at that part, there starts to be some ocean balconies on the floor underneath, which is deck 14. So for example, I don't know, I've got it marked here. I would just avoid any of the balcony rooms on deck 14, basically. Because at the front, you've got the solarium. Okay, like ahead of the front elevators, you have the solarium. Between the front and back elevators, which is like most of the middle of the ship, you have the pool deck above. And then from the back elevators towards the very back of the ship, either it's mini golf on the port side or you have a sports court on the starboard side. Imagine you need to sleep in it and someone's playing basketball above you. Or like volleyball. And they're like jumping and stomping and running around and bouncing a ball. Like, no, Mary. So again, there are going to be rooms on 14 where like it just happens to be quiet for those particular rooms. But there are going to be rooms on 14 where it's going to be noisy and there is no exact way to say which rooms are going to be quiet or not. There's so many different things going on the pool deck above you. Just don't. Unless the ship is like 90% full and you don't have an option. Some people like to be on 14 because they know they want super fast, easy access. They just want to be like one flight of stairs away from the pool deck and the solarium. And that's fine. If you want to do that, that's completely okay. Just know that, you know, it could be noisy. That's all. All right. Those are all the areas. I think this podcast might have a very, very narrow audience. Those are some of the areas I think you should avoid based on my own experience. I've been on this class of ship, I don't know, like 6 or 7 times, and also having volunteered with Atlantis and having talked to a whole bunch of people. Those are the areas that I would avoid. The really, really bad areas, honestly, is when you're right beside Studio B on deck 3. Even then, it's not like every single room on deck 3 is bad. There's some really great rooms on deck 3, actually. And then there's some iffy-ish ones on 6, 7, 8, for example. But like they're actually very minor. You're on 6, 7, 8, you're probably going to be okay. And then I talked about the boardwalk balcony and the Central Park balcony. If you book an interior balcony, you're going to get noise from the boardwalk or from Central Park. You know what you're signing up for when you book one of those rooms. And then, yeah, deck 14, just try not to. Just don't take that chance. If possible, try to move to a different deck. All right. That is all the information I wanted to cover today. If you have some questions, I guess. If 100 of you ask me if your specific room is good or not, I don't know if I can answer 100 of you, but I think there's only probably 5 or 10 of you listening to this in all seriousness. So yeah, sure. If you want some specific advice and guidance for your specific situation, or if you want to know, hey, Joey, I'm thinking about booking in this part of the ship. What do you think? I guess feel free to comment down below. I think there's only like 10 of you listening anyways by this point. But yeah, there you go. Hopefully that was helpful for you. And am I going to go on this cruise? I don't know yet. I might go on this cruise. We'll see. But I feel like a lot of people do want to go on this cruise. There's been a lot of people asking, oh, when is it going to be available for bookings? So hopefully for those of you that want to pick the best room possible, this little podcast has been helpful for you. Again, if you like my YouTube videos and you like my content and you like this podcast, please consider supporting me. Even just subscribe to the podcast or leave like a 5-star review or subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click the thumbs up on a video that you like there. Doesn't cost you money. That would also be greatly appreciated as well. And until next time, bye y'all.